Hi and welcome to Gizinta. If you're watching this video, you've probably already been to the Gizinta website. You probably watched our video on the intro. You probably downloaded and checked out how to use the tools. You might even have seen this on GitHub and started to think about how you're going to make this work on your project. This video is a good video because it's going to help you get started with Gizinta and show you how to set up your own transformations for your own projects. So when you downloaded the Gizinta tools and set it up on your computer, you ended up with two folders, one with the Gizinta XML files. And again, those are examples that you can use for your project work. What I'm going to show you here is how to use the tools to set up your own project. So again, I'll just use the Gizinta example, but first thing I'll do is I'll create a project. So essentially what we're doing in this is we're identifying the source and target. What I typically do on a project is I'll set up a little spreadsheet that lists out what are the sources and targets. In this case, it's pretty easy because I've got a source data set in GZville that's a gravity main, and I'm going to go over to the Esri's ArcGIS for local government model as an example here. And what I'll do is save an XML file here called gizinta.xml. That'll just take a second or so to run, and you'll see that now. What we want to do here now is we're going to take a look at the structure of this, and it's gone through and created the overall structure for our Gizinta file. I had based my data model on our ArcGIS for local government model already, so a lot of the field names match and things, so it's just telling me it's going to copy those things. But there's some fields missing because, for a small town, a lot of times people aren't going to be able to manage as much information as the bigger model. So some of those things didn't match. Now, you could go here and hand edit it, and those of you that are XML fans and people that are interested in that sort of thing may want to do it that way. But we've also set up Gizinta Field Mapper, which I think is going to make it a lot more accessible for most of us to do this kind of work. So what I can do here is that'll launch me over to the Gizinta website, and you can see here again it's given me the fields that matched already from the source. And it's also given me the options to pick other ones. Of course, for main shape, I don't have a field. And you may be able to do some of these things. Sometimes, when the field names are different, like your might be mixed cased install dates, so you'd pick those things. But here it's pretty straightforward. The other thing we can do is set up our QA settings. So we can QA the source if we want to, and we can also set target QA values. So for facility ID, for example, this one should be required and unique. I really just want to copy those values over. Install date, diameter, material, that sometimes those aren't populated in my data set, so I'll just make those optional and copy them over. We'll do one other thing here though. Let's go here and we'll make the last update and the last editor required on these ones. And we'll do a similar thing on owned by and managed by. So in this case, what I want to do after thinking about this for a little bit is I didn't set these because in a small town, we own and manage everything. But we want to set a default value for that in ArcGIS for local government, or maybe we're sharing it regionally with other people. So we want to populate that actual value. And I'll do one other thing in here, which is set up a Python calculate for the last update and the last editor things. There's several different ways that we could do this, but I'll show you one example that I've used quite a bit that I think is a handy way of doing it. So now that I've got this laid out, and this is something that most of us should be able to sit down and think through and put together, what I'll do is I'll hit save, and what this will do is it'll save me this XML file locally, and you can see now what it's done is it's populated some of these things. So if you aren't familiar with how to type this in, or you prefer the web experience, it's basically going to do the exact same thing that you could do here, sitting here editing it in something like Notepad++. But what we wanted to do is a couple of things. Like one of them was here. I know from ArcGIS for local government domains that I want to set up this default value here to be 1. And I'll just do the same thing for the maint by piece of it. Now, the other thing we do here, I set up Python calculate and the expression hasn't been filled in. We go back to another example I have here, a more finished one where what we did is we actually used a built-in thing here. Let's use for the date, we'll use get the DB time. Just a little bit of cleanup here. And I'll do the similar kind of thing for so what we did in this case is two things. One of them is there's a built-in function in GZ support to get the database time, but there's also a thing for those of you that want to get fancier is there's a my Gizinta.py file that you can add your own functions into, and this default username function will always return a value. A lot of times when we run these things in batch mode, that kind of thing, it just system is the username, so it's actually better to have something where we set it as a value like this. So essentially what you can do is continue to make updates and changes like this and get your projects dialed in this way. You can run this multiple times in the field mapper and you can get everything dialed in and ready to go. When you're finished with that process, you might also copy those files back, like I did to the GZLand folder here. And now to make a playlist, the playlist essentially is just a list of all of the files that we want to run for this particular project. And there's a final tool in here that will actually create a Gizinta playlist. You just tell it what folder that you want to use, and you want to what are the names of the files, and then what's the name of the output name that you want to use for that playlist. And that will create you a playlist file, which will be easy to use. You can go back then and wire this up and essentially use that playlist as the input for something like this run all function that we put together in Model Builder. Anyway, hope that helps you to get started with this. And again, if you want to take a closer look at all of this, we put a fair bit of documentation in terms of the extract and transform and load processing out on the Gizinta website. So hopefully that'll help you get started. Best of luck with Gizinta.